So welcome everyone to our third installment of Earth Regeneration in Practice, where we are following up on the previous session where I was actually co-hosting an immersion in Medellin, traveling to different field sites in the Abura Valley to weave territories, and had brought the people from Medellin to Barichara for them to have an immersion here. And so I couldn't be with you, and Brian Pupa of the Legacy Project in the Greater Toronto bioregion hosted the call about the work we're doing with bioregional funding ecosystems and how stories and money can connect us into landscapes. But today I want to do something much more spiritual, at least for me personally, it's very spiritual. I think it'll be very spiritual for many of you. So if you need Kleenexes on hand, you might feel the moment of an upwell of emotion for what we're going to talk about today. Because what I want to share with you today is part of my spiritual practice and part of my calling as a living being at this time, which is that some of you may have been following our trials and tribulations when I posted on Facebook or LinkedIn about the human dramas that Penny and I have been dealing with, which in the last month have been pretty intense and in many ways very negative. And I have to ask myself in those difficult moments, what am I really doing, and how should I continue, and in what ways should I continue? And it became clear to me that I have a very specific purpose as a speaker for the earth, and in my unique way that I do, which is I can name the most beautiful stories that are possible, that are really painful to hear, because if you look at all the trends, they're pretty unlikely to happen. And so what I realized is that I have to sit in the depths of pain and the depths of grief to see the beauty. And that's part of my path. That's part of my path. And what I'm going to share with you today is completely possible, even though statistically speaking, it's probably going to seem pretty unlikely. But if we can't name it, we can't do it. And so today we're going to talk about how to do regeneration at the largest of scales, the scale that includes more than one continent. Because the only way to do the work at the planetary scale, which is actually too big to be concrete, we have to see these subsystems of the earth, these systems of the earth that connect major diverse regions and that are absolutely necessary for us to see, to know our place in the story. And the story I'm going to share today is a story that will have a strongly scientific component. I'm going to show you some of the best citizen science research being done on the planet, and part of it being led by a group of bird researchers, ornithologists at Cornell University, which is based in Ithaca, New York. And the work that they have done with bird watchers and gathering these special data sets is truly phenomenal. But then also we're going to see some of the work that we're doing in Barichara with Sueños del Bosque, the work of bringing children into connection with the forest, and how these tiny little actions were like yesterday I was digging retention ponds with 7 kids as the 7 kids were doing an activity in the forest behind our house. And I'm looking at these 7 kids and I saw them doing what we're going to talk about today, doing their tiny little part in the way that children between the age of 7 and 9 years old were doing yesterday. And then we're going to see this deeply indigenous part, this part of what do we do to undo 500 years of colonization, to honor the great prophecies of the indigenous peoples. And while our focus today is on the Americas, you're going to see that this is relevant to the planet. And that if we could do what we're going to talk about today in the Americas, it would have a planetary consequence. And I keep thinking as I'm holding today's topic about the Americas, I'm thinking about the articles that Elias has written about how the Mediterranean shows us that there are not, 3 different continents of Europe and Asia. What the hell is that landmass as 2 continents? What kind of stupidity is that as a colonial construct? And how the hell can Africa be separate? When I actually watched a video yesterday that I shared in Earth Regeneration in Practice about the Great Rift Valley, which connects from South Africa to basically defining the structural features of the Middle East. So it's not even the Great Rift Valley of Africa. It's the Great Rift Valley of something much bigger. And that for us to hold this scale lets us see our small actions in context. So today we're going to talk about the living processes across continents. And we're going to see how those living processes, which are very real, already have captured the imaginations of millions of human beings for the topic that I'm going to talk about today. And I'll let the bird out of the bag a little bit. We're going to talk about bird migration. And as we talk about bird migration, you're going to see that, Dave, the birds that fly through Ohio and the Miami River, they visit us in the Northern Andes, and that we have to care for them. And so what I want to do today is show you how to dream at a transcontinental scale. And the reason that I might tear up is I see my responsibility with what we're doing at Sueños del Bosque and Barichara as being one of the patterns that I have a responsibility to bring to the 5 sacred forests of Mesoamerica that we're going to learn about today. And if you happen to be in any of those forests, if you happen to be in Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, you're going to see that you're now part of my story and I'm now part of yours. And by the way, those of you in the greater Toronto bioregion, the forests of the Northeast, the Ogallala High Plains, greater Appalachia, the Deep South, the Midwest and the Upper Midwest, sorry, you're stuck with it. You're part of the story too. And that's without the part that I'm not going to draw attention to, which is everywhere south of Colombia. I'm not going to draw attention to it because I want to focus the story, but it's clear that this goes all the way to Tierra del Fuego in southern Argentina. And so, so you're going to see that today. And you're going to see that it's completely actionable, completely doable. And like I said, it may not happen. So I'm going to warn you now, if you watch this presentation, you might become responsible for making this story happen. You might find yourself responsible to it because it's just too beautiful to let go. And so I want to just jump right into the presentation. I think we're going to have a really lively discussion afterwards. And so, yeah, I'm just going to get started. And I've made Penny a co-host, so Penny can like handle microphones and background noise and all of that if we need to. There will be a technical glitch at one point where I'll show a video on YouTube. I'll have to jump over to YouTube to show it. But it's really important that you can see this 10-minute video from the Cornell Ornithology Lab. And you'll see why it's so important. And we're going to live the experience of two-eyed seeing today. We're going to see the world through indigenous lenses and through scientific lenses in the same story. So that'll be very present. So with that in mind, let's jump in. And so the idea today is that we're going to explore living pathways across continents. And you can see the image credit here, Cornell Lab of Ornithology. This image is a screenshot from the documentary I'm going to show you. So we've already seen in the webinars of the learning journey on how to organize your bioregion, and we've seen in various other places in the design school that we've seen that water flows at continental scales and it flows across continents, that there are evaporation processes from the ocean that create the snow pack on the mountains of the Rockies, of the Sierras of California, of the Cascades, of the Andes. And we've seen that water connects life within and across continents. So we already know that water does this. And some of you have seen images like this one. This is taken from NASA, that continents have continual exchanges, including dust from the Sahara being swept across the Atlantic to be cloud condensation nuclei to seed the rains of the Amazon. That there are these processes, these continual exchanges of the earth between and across continents that are always happening. And thanks to our contemporary scientific frameworks, like satellites and like data sensor networks and computers and scientific visualization, we can see them. And as we see them, we become responsible to them. And so how do we design with these patterns and relationships? There was a webinar I gave about 3 months ago where I showed how this thick line of rain that forms in the intertropical convergence zone of the Pacific runs directly into the part of the northern Andes where the sacred rivers of the Caquetá department and the Caquetá River in Colombia has about literally 4 meters of rain per year. Which means if you go to Florencia, like I did, we were delayed by 12 hours to get on our airplane to fly to Bogota because it was raining too much. And the Caquetá River is one of the largest tributaries of the Amazon basin. So here is an oceanic Pacific Ocean scale birthing massive river systems on the continent of South America. How do we learn to see these patterns, and then how do we design with them? And how do they show us the way forward? That's what I want to show you today. And so this is where we jump right in to this video, the 5 great forests of Mesoamerica. And look at this framing, the protecting of our shared birds. The birds are our sacred gift across the Americas, and they're our sacred responsibility. And so, for the next 10 minutes, let's learn how these birds connect us across the Americas.
When we think of spring, we think of a lot of things. We think of life coming back in different forms. We think of rain. We think of flowers. But for most people, it really means birdsong. So imagine, what would it sound like and feel like if birds didn't come back? I've always said if birds could speak, I wouldn't have a job. Birds are trying to tell us a lot. Ever since 1970, we've lost about 3 billion birds. And the most recent state of the birds suggests that 1 in 4 species are facing extinction in North America alone. One of the main reasons for the declines for migratory birds can be linked to habitat loss and degradation. And we always had a hard time deciding which are the most important areas that we should be investing in protection, because we haven't been able to get a big picture overview of how these birds that migrate thousands of miles, where they spend their time, when are they spending most of their time there, and what are those species that are relying in these specific places. We have known that Latin America is important for a lot of migratory birds. But what we didn't know until now is how important individual places are. What's very exciting is for the first time, we're able to really quantify for each individual species and across all species, the importance of the 5 great forests of Mesoamerica.
I think that birders in North America have this general idea and knowledge that the birds that they love to watch in the spring and summer leave and they go to Central and South America, but I think it doesn't really hit home for people until they're here, just really where their birds are going and how abundant they are. The 5 great forests of Mesoamerica are the last large blocks of tropical forest remaining in Mesoamerica. They are the Selva Maya of Belize, Mexico, and Guatemala, the Mosquitia of Honduras and Nicaragua, Indio Maíz Tortuguero, which crosses Nicaragua and Costa Rica, La Amistad of Costa Rica and Panama, and then the Darien, which is between Panama and Colombia.
Magnolia también. Ajá, magnolia, guarda.
Otra magnolia.
Sí. We've known anecdotally that these forests are super important for migratory birds, but we, until recently, weren't able to actually quantify how important these forests are for populations of those species. And thanks to eBird, which is the largest participatory science database in the world, we're now able to put numbers to what we kind of already knew, which is that these forests are really important for birds.
Once we started getting a lot of data in eBird, it became clear that the possibilities were going to be endless, because we're able to really take a big picture look and assess where are they spending most of their winter, where are they breeding, and we're able to do that across every single species in North America now. Out of the 314 migratory bird species we studied, we found that over half of those species use the 5 great forests. If we take a look at wood thrush, which is in steep decline, once they leave their breeding grounds in the eastern US and Canada, 1 in 4 individuals ends up in the 5 great forests, remaining there up to 4 to 5 months. We see a similar pattern in the broad-winged hawk, as individuals migrate south from their breeding grounds in Canada and the eastern US. 1 in 3 individuals stop in the forest before continuing their journey to South America. The same is true for the cerulean warbler, whose population has declined by 72% since 1970. After they depart the Midwest and Appalachia, 1 in 3 stops in the 5 great forests before they migrate south to the Andes. When we combine the top 40 migratory bird species that use these forests and follow their migration across a full annual cycle, we really see the 5 great forests light up like a beacon. It's incredible to see how concentrated they are in these forests, and then how broadly they distribute once they've returned to the North American breeding grounds in the spring. And that speaks volumes about how important they are, how much we rely on what happens there, but also of that linkage that we were never able to make before, about that shared stewardship that we have with these forests.
We found that migratory birds connect the 5 great forests to Texas Hill Country, to the lower Mississippi Valley, to the Appalachian Mountains, New York and Massachusetts and Connecticut, as well as large parts of eastern Ontario, and then also to the upper Midwest. The forests are facing some really urgent threats. They're being decimated by illegal cattle ranching and forest fires. In just the last 15 years, the northern 3 forests have lost 1/3 of their forest cover. And we can bring back the forest that's been lost, but that means doing forest restoration on a massive scale, which requires a lot of resources. The people who live within the 5 forests are really the heroes in protecting the forest. They are conducting forest patrols to protect the forest from further deforestation. They're also doing incredible work to prevent forest fires. And then these same communities are also doing the on-the-ground work of restoring forest that's been lost or degraded.
Algo muy importante en esto es la integración y la participación comunitaria. Es la comunidad en conjunto con nosotros quien decidimos y analizamos cuál es la mejor área para que podamos restaurar e iniciar nuestros trabajos de restauración.
Some of these same local communities have constructed native tree nurseries where they collect seeds of native trees from the surrounding forest, and they plant them and take care of them until they get to be seedlings that can be planted in old clearings and cattle pastures.
El tema de talleres, ¿va? Que tenemos que proteger nuestros bosques, hacer las cosas de manera sostenible acá en nuestra comunidad. Pues en unos años yo pienso que ya todas las áreas están con pastizales, ya no van a ser igual, ¿verdad? Y también la presencia de aves ya va a haber más presencia.
One of the really cool things is that a lot of the eBird data was generated by people who live in the 5 great forests.
Mira la magnolia aquí hay que andar tío, ¿no? Mirarle la marca de campo que tiene abajo la cola y que tiene negrito.
Chalo has created this incredible team of young local men and women to identify birds by sight and sound and then to monitor them.
Nunca me imaginé que en algún momento yo iba como a salir a dar charlas y decirle a los nuevos niños de que lo que debemos cuidar. Me gustaría que muchas personas más se involucren y que pues también sean parte de todo esto que nosotros estamos haciendo ahora.
Qué bonito saber de que lo que estamos haciendo está sirviendo para algo, está sirviendo para dar a conocer al mundo la importancia de conservar, de mantener nuestros bosques, ¿verdad? Entonces creo que eso le impacta a uno y le dan ganas de seguir trabajando y aportando para el beneficio de toda la humanidad. No solo para mí, ni solo para mi hijo, ni para alguien más, sino es para todo el mundo, ¿verdad? Entonces creo que es algo que me ha motivado de seguir adelante.
Seeing all of the people who love these forests so much and are so dedicated to protect what they have and to restore what's been lost, that gives me hope. We need people who maybe have never heard of these forests to really understand how connected they are to us in North America and just support the people who are there on the ground fighting every day to protect them.
Just think about the possibility of connecting with those efforts to make sure that year-round we can enjoy birds here, they can enjoy birds there, and really have migratory birds start to come back.
So, when we watch a video like this, and we think about these 5 great forests, what becomes possible is to see how to weave a story across them, like we just saw in that video. And what's really powerful about this is that, like I said, it's already being organized and it's really possible to do. So what would be an example? What would be a way of making this really concrete where we could feel ourselves being a part of something like this, to be able to do regeneration across continents? And this is where I want to just briefly share 2 levels of work that I'm helping to lead, that Penny and I are both deeply involved in, and that make part of this possible. So one is that last year, as part of the movement of territorial foundations in Colombia, I suggested the creation of the Northern Andes Regeneration Fund, and that this was born and funding was moved into it last year. More funding was moved into it this year, and I'm starting to do this work of connecting with different territories across the Northern Andes to engage in large-scale regenerative practices. And so here you can see the 7 territories that currently make up parts of this Northern Andes Fund, and you can see that they are co-located with dense areas of where those birds arrive to during their migration. So we've been weaving the themes of education, economy, ecosystem restoration, and territorial healing as a pattern of relationships across these 7 territories, which include 2 territories of the headwaters of the Amazon, and then several territories in the main mountain ranges of the Northern Andes. And as we do this work, we're creating a pattern that could connect itself to those 5 great forests of Mesoamerica. So as we learn how to create these learning exchanges between territories and financial flows across them, how could we take those patterns and bring them to Mesoamerica? And how could we bring North American organizing to what we're doing both in the Northern Andes and to Mesoamerica? Well, this requires focus to have a starting point. So I want to suggest a starting point that's really ready to begin developing itself, which is that as we invite financial flows into the Northern Andes Regeneration Fund, there's a very simple way of thinking about it, which is that we mobilize money into a pool. We distribute it across a network of territorial foundations that are organizing their work as holistic hydrological systems, which of course includes biodiversity and human culture and human economy, but they're organized structurally as watershed systems. That can then arrive into local action networks, which is that there are local people taking regenerative action, just like we saw in the video of people who are engaging in patrolling of the forests for illegal deforestation, as well as education and reforestation efforts. Obviously, those kinds of efforts are also happening in Colombia. So we're helping this organizing to happen within the Northern Andes through these 7 territories. And then that leads to concrete actions. And there are stories that we can tell back out into the world. So you can see this pattern that we're developing in practice for 7 territories in the Northern Andes. We could bring that same logic of practice between the 7 territories of Colombia to the 5 sacred forests of Mesoamerica, as well as to the bioregional organizing that's happening in the Great Lakes, in the forests of the Northeast, and so on, that's happening through the design school and in other places across North America. And we see that this is a logic that we can apply, a way of thinking about organizing and a way of thinking about flowing financial resources, as well as tracking our progress through storytelling. And then when you look at the work that Penny and I are doing in collaboration with Brian and Susan of the Legacy Project to create this bioregional Pando funding ecosystem, where we're explicitly working to create exchanges across continents. So there's this organizing of bioregional regeneration frameworks for the Greater Tikaranto bioregion in the Great Lakes in Southern Ontario, and the Northern Andes Regeneration Fund in Colombia, and creating active relationships between the 2 continents. So that we're already setting up these multi-scale structures that don't currently include Mesoamerica, but very easily could. So how would we take this other work that we're doing and weave ourselves across the 5 great forests of Mesoamerica? Well, when we started the Earth Regeneration Fund a year ago, we brought seed funding to these places, to Cascadia. We had already done previous work in organizing a leaders retreat and activation work in the Colorado Basin, into the forest of the Northeast, the Great Lakes, and the High Plains. So we're already starting some continental scale patterning. And then, of course, we have the financial flows and the learning exchanges of the 7 territories of the Northern Andes. And you can see that if we reach out to and partner with, for example, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and their relationships on the ground, as well as other ways of engaging, we could weave ourselves together with the 5 great forests of Mesoamerica. Now we can start to see a pattern of transcontinental regeneration, of regeneration that works at a scale larger than continents. So this is organized within the ecological realities of bird migration. The bird migration tells us where to focus and how to go about our work. So in each local context, there will be a very tremendous richness of information about how would the restoration work and the alternative economic pathways and the different educational models and the healing processes and the decolonization. How do all of those things happen? Well, they happen in an appropriate way in each local context that's related to the necessities of ecosystem health in those forests for the migration of birds. This anchors us into clarity about how to organize this massive scale effort. Well, 2 weeks ago in the Speaker for the Earth series, I gave a webinar called How Do We Listen to the Dreams of a Forest, where we asked this question: am I dreaming of the forest, or is the forest dreaming of me? Well, here we see these 5 great forests of Mesoamerica. Could we dream of birds being in those forests? Does that forest dream of having birds? And what is the role for humans in that? Well, we asked that question 2 weeks ago, focusing in on the work of Sueños del Bosque, which literally translates from Spanish into English as Dreams of the Forest, which is the name of our learning ecosystem in Barichara. So now let's take everything I've said, that we're helping to catalyze bioregional organizing in different parts of North America and in different parts of South America. And there's this organizing pattern of migratory birds connected through 5 great forests of Mesoamerica. Now let's add one element. Imagine children at the heart of it all. Imagine, for example, in Costa Rica, the Children's Eternal Rainforest, which was created by students in Sweden in 1986, that currently is a biosphere reserve protecting 120,000 hectares of rainforest and cloud forest in Costa Rica, led by third grade children in Sweden in 1986, that process shows us the way. Imagine the children dreaming of forests and working with children through local education efforts spanning across North, Central, and South America as a way of protecting these migratory pathways of birds. Now, what might this look like? Well, as I said in that webinar 2 weeks ago, and I've said this before, Sueños del Bosque is a name that has two meanings. We have the dreams of the forest that we cultivate in the consciousness of children. How do we cultivate consciousness and connection and guardianship within children so children dream of healthy forests? In our case in Barichara, it's dreaming of the high Andes tropical dry forest. But in each place, how do children dream of forests? But then the other direction, the more indigenous, the more spiritual direction, is what are the dreams the forest has for her humans? How does the forest dream of humans who bring back the birds? How does the forest dream of humans who bring back the water? How does the forest dream of humans who raise children who dream of birds in the forest? And then we start to see that we could focus on education with children as our anchor practice for how we weave the coherence across these continents. And now we look at this same map in a different way, because here are the 5 great forests of Mesoamerica, and most of those birds arrive to where we are in Barichara. If you were to go back and look at that animation in the movie, the documentary we saw, you would see that where we are in Barichara lights up with a density of bird population, because many of those birds come to us in Barichara, which is why when I showed that documentary to my daughter, her response at the end was, she said, "Daddy, I live in one of these forests." She recognized the caracolis in the video, the patevacas. She recognized some of the birds. She said, "Dad, that's a pecharoja," which is the red-breasted bird with the black feathers on its wings, which I witnessed one of those pucharojas when we were in Amarillo, Texas, working with Will Masters of Ogallala Life, talking about how to regenerate the Ogallala. I literally saw that bird, which lands in this citrus tree in the courtyard of our house. So I've had that bird visit my house, and I have visited that bird in the high plains of Texas. So when we think about Sueños del Bosque and Barichara, why are we investing in a learning ecosystem in Barichara? It's to replicate its patterns to other places. So what if we created a Sueños del Bosque program to bring the children of Barichara to these forests, to work with local school children, to create a curriculum of reforestation for the migratory birds? And now you begin to see that this crazy dream of transcontinental regeneration could be done in very practical ways. Maybe our first step is to connect with a group of children in a school in the Selva Maya and raise about $5,000 or $6,000 to buy airline tickets to take some of our kids from Sueños del Bosque and Barichara and fly them up to the Selva Maya to meet with the school there. I just want you to feel how concrete this could be, that these are examples. It's completely achievable to imagine raising $5,000 to $10,000. It's completely achievable to imagine organizing a week-long visit for children from Barichara to the Selva Maya, or to La Amistad, or to La Mosquitilla, and to bring those children here, or to bring those children from any of these forests to any of the other forests. And that's how this starts to feel really achievable. And so this brings me to one of the parts of our story that I think is really important, which is a prophecy that was named by indigenous leaders of the Amazon, principally in Ecuador, but also in surrounding regions, including in the Putumayo and the Caquetá region of Colombia, which is the prophecy of the eagle and the condor. And the prophecy of the eagle and the condor, which is sometimes called the prophecy of the eagle, condor, quetzal, and hummingbird, or in Spanish, La Profecía de Águila, Condor, Quetzal y Colibrí, is a prophecy that tells us about the story I'm sharing with you today. So what is the prophecy of the eagle and the condor? This is how the Pachamama Alliance names it on their website. The eagle and the condor is an ancient prophecy that speaks of human societies splitting into two paths, that of the eagle and that of the condor. The eagle people rise high above the world and imagine themselves separate, creating vast knowledge of science and technology to see the world from a distance, creating power to dominate that which they see and therefore lose healthy relationship with it. This is the story of the modern world, the colonizer cultures, the story of science and technology. This is the story of the Western peoples. But then there's the condor. The condor people go deep into the world and participate directly in the cycles of life and death. This is the indigenous people of the Americas who maintain their ancestral practices, who engage in ceremony with tobacco, with yahe, with other plant guides, and that place themselves in the spirit world of the forests and remain deeply connected in a participatory cosmovision and worldview. And so if the eagle and the condor come back together, the prophecy of the eagle and the condor states that 500 years after the colonization of the Americas, there will be a time when both eagle and condor fly in the same sky. And as they fly in the same sky, they realize that they have a shared responsibility to what they're a part of. So now if we look at this map of the Americas and think of the eagle, the condor, the quetzal, and the hummingbird, we start to see that the prophecy might have hinted that the way the eagle and the condor can see the world through the same sky is through the eyes of the birds. What if we fulfill the prophecy by coming into right relationship with birds? What if that's the secret? What if that's the way in? What if bird watchers unite to live out the prophecy of the eagle and the condor? So this is the question. Is this how we learn to regenerate the earth at the transcontinental scale? And before closing the presentation, I want to read to you a poem sent to us by Laura, who's here on the call. And Laura sent this to me 10 minutes before the call today. And it felt so significant and so timely that I felt the need to share it. So here is the story. The elder said, once when the forest lost its song, the bear walked alone beneath the dying stars. His paws were heavy with the weight of sorrow. His breath, a storm that no wind could calm. Then came the raven, dark as the truth of night, carrying stories in his wings. Brother, he called, the earth still breathes beneath your feet. Bear lifted his eyes, and in the blackbird's gaze, he saw the fire of dawn. Teach me how to dream again, he whispered. Raven sang, not of glory, but of rain falling on tired soil, of roots remembering light. The forest listened, and so did the mountains. Tears became rivers, silence became song. The elder said, when the strong weep and the wise stay, the world begins to heal. Just feel that for a moment. When the strong weep, our tears fall like rain, and the roots can seek the light, and the world is filled with song. We can do this. We can do this. So the question for us now is, what is our responsibility? What is our role in this? When we can make it so clear that we know how. We know how. And now comes the burden of that responsibility. If we truly can connect the forests with the songs of the birds, there will be a new dawn. And we will live through the ears of our grandchildren to hear the song of those birds. And I realize now for me, as I grew up in the Ozarks Plateau of Missouri, in one of the sanctuaries of those birds, that I arrived to the greatest sanctuary of birds on earth, which we named after a psychopath, Cristobal Columbus. Because Columbia's boundaries, as poorly drawn as they are, create the net that holds the bird songs of the Americas. The place that receives the birds of the north and that sends them back in the northern spring. And if indeed we are to regenerate the earth, should it not be with bird song? Should there not be children laughing? Should we not remember that it's through play and connection that we place those tiny fingers in the dirt and that they give rise to the seeds of a new dawn? So as I was preparing this presentation, what struck me was that I have a gift. I can sit in the deepest darkness of my own pain and I can see this kind of beauty. But to call forth this kind of beauty requires me to cry in the grief of the night. Because I have to know that these forests will go away. And then to quote Dr. Seuss from his book, The Lorax, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, things aren't going to get better. They're not. Now we can hold that as a judgment, but let's look at it as what it truly is. It's a gift. Because in that gift is seeing the way. Now, I have already visited Blue and Silver Farm, which is a project of Pickering College in the Oak Ridges Moraine of the Greater Tkaronto bioregion, and I carried with me fossils that I brought as gifts from Barichara, from the elevated seafloor of the Northern Andes in Santander. And I stood and told those children that I was the embodiment of the eagle and the condor, and that I was bringing fossils from the Northern Andes, rocks that the birds that were coming to the forests of Ontario would recognize. And as I talked to those children, I looked out into the trees and I saw birds that I recognized in Colombia. I saw them in Ontario. And as Penny and I walked through one of the playas in Amarillo, Texas, these unique landforms that capture almost 100% of the rainfall of the storms that move across the Great Plains and recharge the Ogallala Aquifer, I saw that red-breasted bird, the pecha roja. I saw that bird that sits here on the tree at our house in Barichara. But also, I've gone to Florencia and to Putumayo and to Medellin and to the coastal mangrove tropical dry forests of Montes de Maria. And I've experienced those birds here in Colombia. Now, I haven't journeyed further south. I haven't had time in my own life to travel further south, but maybe my job is to bring children north. So what's yours? What's your job in this? What is your role? As we ask ourselves, what is earth regeneration in practice? The hardest part is the grieving. Because the grieving is what brings us through to the light. Joanna Macy told us that. She was right. And so what I want to invite now is some time for reflection, some time for feeling, for us to sense what would it mean for us to dream on the wings of birds. And for those of you who are not currently living in the Americas, you've got a version of this because the Mediterranean does this too, if you're in Europe or Africa. right? And if you are in Australia, then you've got your own version of the birds that fly across that dry desert continent and connect with the island peoples of Oceania. Because the birds don't care where we drew our stupid maps. Notice that even the 5 forests don't care where the nation states are. Right? They were all crossing national boundaries. Every one of them crossed national boundaries. Because the national boundaries are fake, but those forests are real. So in a certain sense, if I'm in Belize or Honduras, isn't what matters, is am I in La Selva Maya? Which is in both. So the invitation now is to ask, what is our responsibility in this time? What is our responsibility when someone can point out how clear it is? Like, let's say I decide to bring a group of kids to these 5 great forests from Colombia, and I need to raise $50,000. You could help with that, right? We could do that together. Well, when Penny and I traveled the Colorado River from the sacred headwaters to as close to the Sea of Cortez as we could get, the most concrete vision we could imagine at that time, 2 years ago, was to create a bioregional learning center in the sacred headwaters of the Colorado Basin in some place like Carbondale or Paonia, and to set another bioregional learning center in Mezcatal, Mexico, and to have children travel the distance from the headwaters to the sea of the Colorado River. Or what if we were to think of children rowing or paddling the 5 Great Lakes, starting in somewhere like Lake Simcoe, where the lakes join to birth the flow from Lake Huron that moves around and eventually goes out the Lawrence River and into the North Atlantic and into the Arctic. How could we organize with children to connect these waterways? And so that's my invitation to all of you. And I actually feel like witnessing is more important than small conversation in this moment. So rather than going into breakouts where we would get into small groups to process this, I want to create a very simple technology of the indigenous people of Colombia, which is called the Círculo de Palabras, a circle of words. And the way that a Círculo de Palabras works, very simple. And this is basically a sharing circle. So anyone who wants to share will raise their hand. And the principle is simple. Imagine that we're sitting in a circle in one of the sacred spiritual houses, one of the casas de pensamientos, or the malocas of Colombia, one of these indigenous houses, sitting in a circle. And as you're sitting on the floor, imagine you have a basket sitting next to your right knee and a basket sitting next to your left knee. And the basket on the right is what you accept into your heart as you listen. The basket in your left is what you do not accept into your heart because you don't agree with it or it doesn't feel right. By listening from your heart about what you hear to ask, what should I put into each basket, you will listen with the kind of heart that will allow us to have a Círculo de Palabras, which is that anyone who feels ready to share can share anything that you feel this group needs to hear. And everyone else has the responsibility to sit with an open heart and notice which basket you're putting what you hear. And then as we go around, anyone who would like to share can share whatever they feel is appropriate. Now, if we were doing a proper Círculo de Palabras, it could last for hours because you would speak for as long as you feel you need to. Now here, this is somewhat artificial. We're not sitting in a casa de pensamientos. We can't look at and feel the bodies of everyone having this conversation. So this is not really a Círculo de Palabras, but I think that this is the way for us to witness this dream. I just brought you a gift that there is a way for children to regenerate the migratory pathways of birds across continents. And so the invitation now is to listen with an open heart Is there anything that your heart needs to share in this moment? If so, raise your hand and we will witness and listen to you. And as you think of sharing and raising your hand to speak, you might respond to something that was said, or you might be moved to say something new. And the idea is that we say what needs to be said in the way that we listen with an open heart. So I'll wait for the first person to be ready to raise their hand. And then we'll begin. And it is Bree. Bree, over to you.
Yeah, I just want to really acknowledge you, Joe, and thank you for sharing your heart and what you are embodying as a speaker for the earth. It feels really resonant. And to flow forward with that, I'm called to share that locally here, there's a few communities that are calling in bird medicine. Nature Canada and Birds. I don't know if it's Birds Canada. I can try to put the links in there. I'll try to figure that out. It's Birds Canada. Nature Canada and Birds Canada are both offering programs that I've been involved in that help communities become bird friendly. And that leads to citizen science / practices in our local communities that call back the birds and good bird practices, including, darkening our skies, stopping uses of things like fireworks, lots of layers. You can all look at it, but it's a really wonderful practice that communities up to here. This in the Palo Shore was raised on the Hermosa River. We read the book by John Young, What the Robin Knows, and we engage in bird tallies on the shorelines here as citizen scientists to remember and reflect with bird medicine. So those are just some layers that are happening here. But from a personal practice, this is an invitation to everyone here that will be showing up in the design school around a 22 moon practice that will parallel this work, where we continue to look at water consciousness, our sacred sovereignty through the water that flows through us. And again, to reflect on what Joe was sharing, what is it like to take journeys on waterways in your local watersheds? We'll be having immersions here this year, starting from sacred headwaters. We happen to be at the headwaters of 5 sacred headwaters. So we'll be doing immersions here to honor those waters and flow forward with that. But mostly I just want to honor and acknowledge that I feel called to parallel what you're presencing today with 22 moons and the ongoing water work that is birthed here and globally within our community.
Thank you, Bree. Emmanuel, over to you.
Thank you for the circle and
Emmanuel, your sound is cutting out. I'm not sure if it's your signal.
or maybe, can you hear
There,
me?
it's better. Yeah, now it's better.
Oh, sorry, I won't move. In order to be able to grieve and love almost at the same time, and I'm loving the fact that you're letting nations, non-human nations, guide us as well as children. And it's like an invitation to remember how we used to play when a friend would come up with an idea, or when we looked at the river, and just listen to the stories around us. So thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Michelle.
Thank you. This is just a wonderful experience and a bit of a synchronicity, because I just came across a book about monarch butterflies, and it was, a similar looking at the journey and concluding that two-eyed seeing and preserving the bioregions are what we needed to do. I also spend each morning listening to birds with my Merlin app, and it has a thing that says, "This is my bird." So when I was watching the video, there were a couple of times when I'm like, "This is my bird." Because there were birds that it's got to be true because they're the birds I haven't seen for a while. So there are some birds that stay, the cardinals and the crows, and in fact even robins don't migrate. But there is an element. I love the element of taking the children, but there's also another, and I guess I come from a very frugal family. And we don't fly very, we're kind of careful about flying, whatever. But the other way of doing it is somehow you connect the children and you connect the birds, so that like the part of what's really, really important is for like your daughter to talk to my granddaughter and discover that there these seven, I don't know, your daughter's a little older, my granddaughter's only 7, but for them to discover that this is my bird, but it's also her bird, right? That I think there are a number of ways we could do that, and then the children have a way of influencing the adults that is far more powerful than adults can influence one another. So thank you very much.
Just to name, thank you for adding that dimension. So important. And then over to Marianne.
Hello. Just a few things then. I am unmuted here. Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
A few things is, first of all, that ever since I first started on the first journey to Brazil of what I call the Amazon edge of Amazon expedition, the very first thing that happened is I saw in my mind's eye as well as in dreams, but I felt it over me all the time, this condor. I was going to land in Peru, in Lima, Peru. I decided to land in Lima, Peru because I knew I would be at the highest point above the Amazon, And so this condor followed me the whole time until I got there. And then once I was there, it was the arara bird that took over. And I kept saying the arara all the time. I went to actually see the arara at the zoo in Goiânia and had a whole conversation with him, scratched him and everything, made a real connection. And then that was on the first trip. On the second trip, the arara was still there, but then the eagle appeared, the harpy eagle. The harpy eagle is a very large eagle. This is big. I think it's as big as the American eagle, with this very massive crown on his head. That's what they call the harpy, because it looks like a harpy woman. And suddenly it was all again on displays. I have to call them murals. There was people that was staying in the hostels who had been hunting it, telling me all about it, and it was just all around me. So later on, when I came to Colombia for the immersion, I met a lady who does Tai Chi teaching, and later on I spoke with her after I was back, and she told me, as she met me on the video, that I was called. I was called to come to South America. So I feel very strongly part of this prophecy. When I took the ayahuasca, the yahe, in Manaus, that's what happened. I became the eagle and I saw the world from the eagle's eye. So there's absolutely no doubt. It has to be said that I have followed the bird maps for a long time, years, decades ago. I had the RSPB, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, map on my wall that showed the migration from Europe to Africa. And it's just been like a real constant guidance for the regeneration of Northern Africa, particularly, which I'm connected with or involved with since I was 16. So I'm so happy that you made this presentation, because it's just like, okay, there's somebody else who feels it just as much, that it is a whole tradition, there's a whole prophecy. It's very, very real. At the same time, this is my second point. I'll finish quite quickly, don't worry. Everybody always worries that I talk too long. So there's something about the children, the innocence of the children, what we call the innocence of the children is really a very immediate, true, real perception of things that we lose as we become so-called adults. And at the same time, I'm very attracted to the vision of moving the children about because they'll have that effect wherever they go. But I'm right now dealing with an enormous, very corruption generated bill from the shipping company, the Chinese shipping company that dominates commerce in Brazil, and also from the port of Rio. I'm dealing with all that. And I'm coming into it, as I'm writing my complaint, I realize I've come into it with the eyes of a child. I cannot understand why they're doing what they're doing, and yet they're doing it. And so how do you counteract that? Is it going to be enough to work with the child mind? I think at some level it probably is. But on the other hand, I want also I'm calling out to you, Joe, particularly, because I'm involved in South America just as much as you are now, that we are dealing with levels of corruption that are like absolutely humongous. And, so how do you manage that? I know you have a long history and a long practice of raising funds from North America. I don't. I have worked with a legacy that I had from my daughter's father, and it's just all disappeared in one fell swoop. 17,000 pounds was taken from me just to bring my home out of the Port of Rio. So that's where I'm at with this. And the very last thing I had in my mind as you were talking is, okay, I didn't know about the forests of Mesoamerica. I'm going to look into it. I've had the insight that it's all one continent because I realized that the islands of the Caribbean are the submerged part of the isthmus. And so I've been very conscious because of the trip I just did now about the complete indivisibility of the Americas. But now I'm wondering, how does that fit in that long north-south migration with the forest I'm dealing with? That is what we call the Amazon forest. Again, it's probably very subdividable, and I still don't know enough about that. And the Western Atlantic forest. I want to know more about that, just to let you know. I'm interested, whatever, if I can come in and like maybe be part of the research that you're doing or the work that you're doing there. Okay, that's it.
I just want to say thank you, Marianne, especially for me personally. The thing that really touched me was you telling the story of that map on your wall for so many years. Just to feel that this dream has been with you for a very long time. Yeah. So thank you. And then Davida.
Apologies for the lack of video. I just wanted to bring up these experiences that I've had with the dreams of the forest and the talk today. It feels part of the dreaming. With the dream of the forest talk, right before me, I saw a bald eagle swoop down and pick up a seagull and fly off. And just now, a hawk landed in our backyard and picked up, actually ate two mice and flew off. And it just kind of felt like that shift into the dream time that felt significant. Yeah, that's what I have to contribute.
Thank you for presencing that everyday magic. So important, Davida. Karen, over to you.
When Marianne just shared about the harpy, I raised my hand because I wanted to. I'm reminded of like the women and bird connections that I've been experiencing, and one of them that emerged to me when I was in Barichara for the immersion. There were so many women who had like some symbol of a bird or something that they were wearing as jewelry or something. Annalika had this symbol of Nut, an Egyptian goddess who has wings, And I was sharing my story about Valkyries, how I've been dreaming about Valkyries and transformation, the Valkyries being a creature that helps people die, right? Go from the battlefield to Valhalla. Um, and so I've been thinking about them as a symbol of transformation and movement. And I wanted to share that Emmanuel and I have been hopping like birds from Zoom to Zoom when we go to visit the Mediterranean Zoom call or whatever. We're doing this in this space. Even a few days ago when we hopped onto the Barichara call, that is a way of digitally hopping from these different spaces. And so just thinking about Valkyries and witches and bog witches and the flitting about the sense of freedom that birds also symbolize.
Thank you, Karen. And Denise, over to you.
Thank you. I'm down in my studio making salmon right now. And I love your idea because there's so much people already, like what Karen was just saying, people have so much of a connection to birds. And there's already an infrastructure that could be tapped into because there's so many people who care deeply about birds. And the children just love them immediately. They don't even have to, it doesn't go through their heart. It doesn't go through their brain. They're already in their hearts. And I'm just loving the idea of the birds being an organizing, connecting our hearts and connecting the land and connecting us to each other. And when I a few years ago, I had a dream to make a school of illuminated salmon. And in 2 months, I was able to organize making 350 of them silk 6-foot banners that went to Paris for the climate accords because people had such a heart connection to salmon.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm imagining doing a similar kind of project, and let me know how I can help, to do something like that for salmon and connecting it to festivals and connecting it to schools and having the instructions for these things that you can make and these ways that you could get involved. Like Bree was saying about all these different ways that people can create habitats in their own homes so that, create like infinite ways for people to be directly connected. Because by being connected to the birds, we are connecting to each other. And that connection is personal and global. And so it is a way to convey what you are already doing, but in a way that really connects people's hearts. So I am so excited. And I have been putting off working on salmon because I have too many other things that are more important. But today I was like, no, there is nothing more important than being in my studio making art today. And I was listening to you and I am so happy. So thank you so much.
Denise, you just gave us so many gems, so many beautiful gems right there. Just feel it. Yes, we will make beautiful magic and art together. And then Richard, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. So much in my heart from your presentation. Firstly, just to highlight, if people haven't seen in the chat, I put the links to the presentation that Pete Jeffs and Elias did in the design school around birds weaving bioregions, particularly across Europe, Asia, and Africa, that artificial distinction, that languaging, which is all one continent, as you said, and Elias would say. And also Pete's beautiful book, Birds of Spirit, which have his own artwork as well as his writing, and that connects Europe and the Americas as well, North America, and his writing as well. So absolutely beautiful. And then myself thinking back to the Thames immersion back in May last year, and birds, that was such a central pattern for people's experiences from a red kite, which was once extinct here, sweeping down in front of us into the reeds after baby birds, warblers, and kingfisher darting across in front of us, and just new life everywhere, goslings, cygnets, just people just really feeling the presence of birds. And then thinking about children as well, thinking my own children's nursery when they were before school age, there was one age group called kingfishers. And I imagine that none of those children ever got to see a kingfisher or would go out to see a kingfisher. They were kingfishers in name, but not experience. And what would that, going out to the river and seeing a kingfisher, how would that have, enlivened the children, help them connect with place? And so anything I can do to help turn just a name into experiences for children here really warms my heart too.
Thank you for those very concrete images for us to feel, Richard. Really feel the connection. And then Dana, over to you.
So, two thoughts. The first one is, to me, I love coincidences, and the coinky dink in my life is I'm on my local watershed council, and somebody's arranged the next speaker for our general meeting to be a local songbird person. And so my mind is already thinking, how can I interject what I learned today and share a bigger picture? And the second comment is the question that popped into my head looking at the map during the video, and the idea of the children spreading education in those 5 forests. The question popped into my head, well, who's taking care of those forests where the birds spend their time up north of there? And what can be done there more so than whatever is already being done?
Thank you for that, Dina. It's so important. So important to name that part of the story. And then Nate, over to you.
It is so incredibly rich. And thank you, Joe, and thank you to everyone for holding this field together and expanding it and deepening it. There's something about the instantaneous, direct knowledge of children that in 1984, I moved to Washington, D.C., and there were all the alphabets. And I'd heard about this thing about networking for social change. So, I was looking for a job, and I went to these nonprofits and asked about networking, and they all said, oh, that's what the executive directors do. And I realized they had something, over time, I realized they had something very different in mind. We are networking for planetary transformation. The directness. So my response was, this is ridiculous. Adults can't get this. I need to be working with children. And I did for a while. And that loops back in so many ways. But right now, the directness that I'm experiencing is a directness of spiritual action we have together. And each of us in the council, including you, Joe, plays a role. I'm noticing that in this presentation, you embodied the eagle-condor unity. And you've been working towards that with a lot of your webinars. Bringing us to be able to see from the bird's eye view and the ground at the same time. And so the directness is that it's also, this is the most heart-opening, and they've all been heart-opening, but this is so many people tearing up and crying today. It really hit deep right in the heart center and rippled through the whole body for me. And I sense that that's in the group as well. And that the directness of that energetic ripple, the importance of that, it doesn't stay just within this room. And it's instantaneous and it's direct like that children's knowledge. And I think maybe that's enough of words, but that's what I'm seeing right now, and it's I feel so much more whole. I feel a wholeness that's part of that ripple as well. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nathan. Magdalena, over to you.
Thank you. Well, as you all know, I'm in the bottom of the map in South America, so I'm going to start from your thoughts, Joe, from back to top. We started spring about 2 months ago, and spring is marked here by the arrival of the red-breasted churrinche, we call them, or pecho colorado, like you said. So they fly all the way down, and I have them at home. The second thing is that when I moved to this land 13 years ago, when we came to see the place to purchase it, I asked to stay the night so I could feel the place. And the next morning, I remember telling my husband that there were no birds, no songs in the morning, early morning, which in the other farm where I was at before, I was awakened by the birds' songs. Well, 13 years later, or even before that, we have now the birds wake us up, and we had a crew from the BirdLife International who in 1 hour spotted 56 different species in our land. So I'm trying to say that there is hope, and when you do things right, life comes back, especially birds is one of the indicators. And the third thought is that without being a teacher, I worked with children for a long time, and young children, 0 to 7. And I was a very good teacher because I was a child myself, playing with them. And I think I'm still a good observer of life, and because I'm still a child in my heart, and I am not embarrassed to be one. So my message is to say, take off your masks as adults, enjoy life, express your hearts, and let's all be children, because that's the way we see the world, through our hearts, like somebody said previously, and with naivety and intuition. Thank you.
So I just want to say in other words, just to take what you just said, Magdalena, and put it in other words. In my presentation, I said, imagine placing children at the heart of it all. Well, what if all of us are the children? Mariana, you get to be a child with that map on your wall. It's like that. If we place children at the heart of it all, we can place ourselves. Just because I am 49-year-old child does not mean I can't be part of this. It's not for them that separation is an illusion. It's for us. So
And
thank
where
you for naming that.
Where are you, Magdalena? Where are you in South America?
I am in Uruguay.
Wow. Got it. Thank you.
Very south. Yeah.
Gracias. And Carlos, over to you. Find that mute button. Where is it hiding at? Yeah, you're still muted. I can see that you're muted.
Oh,
there you are.
Okay.
Yes.
Finally found it. I'm sorry. I had it updated and it looks completely different. I have two things. One, it reminded me of Elia's presentation on the diversity of plants, and during and when he was creating kind of a community and they had roles and how they share, and it gave me that feeling of such a great analogy. And it immediately my mind went to like, what are the different types of birds, what are the different types of roles. So immediately we're already educating, like we're already talking about biology and all these perspectives, which was just beautiful. And you're naturally kind of curious in the way it was framed. So just wanted to call that out, that it's almost like a fun play, even though it touches on themes of death and the condor. And so the spectrum is so rich. And then the other piece was almost like logistics. Everybody has an idea of activating at different scales, and that was beautiful too. So it sounds tangible and concrete, like you said. Like everybody had an idea of, of course I could do this. I have worked with children, or I can put it in this platform versus. So I thought that was really energizing. And then finally, of course, I have a little one myself, so it just feels like right on, like spot on. This sounds through all of that knowledge and baggage, like what's the biggest inspiration? It's our children, and you called that out. So just wanted to name all of that. I just feel grateful for everybody here, really building all this, and to you and Penny, of course. And that's it for me.
Oh, gracias, hermano, gracias. So what I also loved about, like, when I watched the documentary with my daughter is, of course, my daughter still doesn't read very much. She's like in the sort of Waldorf way. She's like, when she's getting passionate about learning more, she's learning more. And because she's fully bilingual, reading in English is slower, because English pronunciation is much harder than Spanish pronunciation. Once you know the rules of pronunciation in Spanish, it's always the same. But when she watched that video, I realized she didn't need the subtitles, because my daughter is completely fluent in Spanish and English, and that she could actually become an ambassador for these birds. Because what Elise has said so far, she's almost 9, so she has time to change her mind. But what she said she really wants to do when she's an adult is she wants to create an animal rescue sanctuary for wild animals, which makes sense with her experiences of reforestation and the kinds of things we do in Barichara. But really, her bird sanctuary could be Latin America. She could, and I was like, I don't know if Elise is going to choose to do that. I'm not that father that's like pushing it on my child. But as I watched Elise and she said, Daddy, I live in one of these forests. She recognized the trees, the way that they have those little black bags and the way they do the nurseries. It looks the same here as it did in that video we saw in Honduras. The people were speaking Spanish like they do here. And in Colombia, there are a lot of dialects in different parts of Colombia. So, Central America for her is just like an extension of Colombia in that sense for that child's eye. And I was like, my daughter is being perfectly trained to be an expert in this mission, should she choose to take it on. And that was part of what really hit me. I was like, wow, I was doing this without knowing it. Now, I can't say what Elise is going to choose to do. It's not that I'm pushing that on her, but this is how natural and practical this felt. It was like, not only can we do this, we're already doing it. So, yeah. So, which is represented in the quality and the concreteness of all the ideas being shared here. So, Nate, back over to you.
Yeah, just a quick, I meant to mention earlier, the organization that I'm the board chair for is Neighbors Helping. It centers on elders, and we have something called Experience Corps, where people over 50 tutor children in the public schools under 4th grade to read. In this context, I'm feeling kind of that the place where the snake's tail and mouth meet. And that connection has been marginalized and covered up, and it's life, death, it's cocoon, It's metacrisis and metachrysalis. It's elders and children. So I'm feeling a longing to see pairing and grouping of elders and children together in this. There's another kind of two-eyed vision there that's really cool when you see it in action. So I just wanted to bring that in. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. So we're now at time. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, this is my last work responsibility before Penny and I start packing for our trip. And tomorrow, very early, we leave for about 2 weeks in the Utah desert, which we're going to cultivate deep connection and some healing and restoration and to really hone our vision for the next year. And it feels very appropriate that this is my last formal action of the design school. It's like to basically have this dream that came into me and give it flight with all of you. And obviously there are versions of this dream that others have said before. What I think is different in this context, not different in the world, different in this context, is this is the first time that I feel like I've been able to articulate a way of doing earth regeneration at the appropriate scales that we are all ready to act upon. It's the first time I've been able to do that, meaning that the scaffolding of this context is also ready as this dream in the world is ready. As Denise said, a lot of this is already out there. It's already been built. All we have to do is live the story and thread the story through moment to moment. And so the role of this is to live the story. And maybe this is a good way for us to close, as we're all also going to go into the time of solstice, winter solstice in the north and summer solstice in the south, is that in the time of solstice, we can feel this in the summer, the strength of that growth and moving toward harvest, and in the winter, that going inward and the preparing of what comes next. And that here we are in this moment where North and South need to come together. And we can be pretty damn sure that our political systems and economic systems are not giving us the stories we need. And here we have it for ourselves. And it will sit on our windowsills and sing to us. How cool is that? Take that centralized government nonsense and multinational corporations and whatever that power is supposed to be that's over there. This is real power. This is real power. Because the real power is in the living processes of the earth. That no matter how hard humans have tried, we have not been able to kill. It's stronger. And like that woman said in the video, we can regenerate these forests. It's just that on this scale, we need to mobilize a lot of resources. Now, you might say that means we need a huge amount of money. No, we need Denise totally empowered to do an art project, right? We need Magdalena to tell us that the birds arrived in Uruguay. We mobilize the resources among us, and we are many. Not on this call. We who care about this are the majority. Notice that story of all those 5 sacred forests, all those people, they were already reforesting before they made the video. They were definitely reforesting before I showed up today and said this. We are continuing a story that started long ago. And we are the humans that the media, the corporate media, is making sure we don't hear about. So be sure your neighbor hears about it as you chat about the bird song, as you walk your dog. In that very human way. In that very human way. And that's how the story can't be stopped. Because it's whispered from many voices in many places. And the birds will carry our songs. So there's a book that I read to my daughter called The Song of the Tree. It's a beautiful children's book. About half of the book is a song. And it's this red bird that arrives to a tree with the other birds. And then all the other birds leave, but the tree stays the bird stays because the bird doesn't want the tree to be lonely. And then the bird discovers all of the other animals that call the tree home when the birds are gone. And I sing this, and half of the book is songs. So for the last week, my daughter, for some reason, has wanted me to sing this book to her to sleep 5 of the last 7 nights. She didn't know I was putting together this presentation. And it's a bird hearing the songs of all of the animals that call the tree home, so that the bird feels like it can be carried in the wind and bring its songs somewhere else. These birds are so much smarter than we give them credit for. So if we just create connections for the birds, they'll do the rest. By the way, the best way to plant a forest is through the butt of a bird. Seriously, give a bird a place to land where it can poop out those seeds it was eating, and the birds will do the work. They're better tree planters than we are. So there's so many levels to this. So many levels. So go out there and seed some bird talk, everyone. And we'll see you on the flip side of the desert. And love to all of you.